Welcome to Frontline News from the University of Maryland School of Medicine News Center. I'm Larry Roberts. Coming up, why you don't need to worry about COVID-19 side effects. And Genomics pioneer Dr. Claire Fraser calls for profound changes in a post-pandemic world. But first, the School of Medicine is conducting genome sequencing of positive COVID-19 test samples to find dangerous variants. Governor Hogan made the announcement.
This enhanced capacity will enable us to screen and sequence over 10% of all COVID-19 cases, giving Maryland one of the strongest surveillance programs in America.
At the School of Medicine, the sequencing is being done in the Genomics Resource Center in the Institute for Genome Sciences.
So this instrument is called an Illumina NovaSeq 6000. It's the highest throughput sequencer that we have here at the Institute. This instrument works by capturing DNA that's made from the virus onto a glass flow cell that looks like this. And on this flow cell are small stretches of DNA called oligonucleotides. And then sequencing chemistry is applied to the flow cell, and we collect the data on this instrument.
The sequencing will detect the UK, South African, and Brazilian variants.
We do that by analyzing the data that comes off this sequencer and looking for both known and new sequence variants in the virus. So we collect all the data from each sample. We compare that to the original SARS-CoV-2 sequence from the Wuhan outbreak, as well as samples throughout the evolution of the virus, and look for variants that have already been identified, as well as potentially new variants. We have picked up several cases of the B117 variant that originally was discovered in the UK. But none of the South African or Brazilian variants so far.
If we identify known variants, we report this to the state. And at the same time, we also deposit all the data into public databases. This is a very critical aspect of what we're doing.
The state can then take steps to limit infections. Since the pandemic began, the Institute for Genome Sciences and University Pathology Associates have performed more than 750,000 COVID-19 tests. As more and more people get vaccinated, it has become apparent that the side effects can vary a lot. Some people have no reaction at all, or a mild reaction such as a sore arm. Others experience stronger flu-like symptoms, including headache and fever and nausea.
All of these are self-limited. So they basically will come up within a few hours of vaccination, and we see that the majority of them will disappear within 3 days.
Dr. Chen says the side effects are a sign that you're building protection against the virus.
So the side effects mean you probably had a really nice immune response, an inflammatory response, but it does not mean that you were infected with COVID because there's no live virus in the vaccine.
Researchers say the side effects seem to affect younger and older people differently.
We get the general sense that young adults, healthy young adults especially, have more of a response, this systemic response where they feel like they get knocked out, where they feel like they don't have energy, and it may take a couple of days for them to feel back to normal.
In our Discovery segment, School of Medicine Genomics pioneer Dr. Claire Fraser delivered a passionate lecture as a capstone to her presidency of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. The lecture was titled Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic in an Interconnected World.
In addition, I think that one of the most important lessons from the COVID pandemic is that it has disproportionately burdened the poor, from individuals that carry out essential service jobs and were not able to work from home, to those with inadequate access to health care, to low-income countries with inadequate public health infrastructure.
Dr. Fraser also called for a reframing of climate change policies to help people understand the impact.
Since the middle of the 20th century, global surface temperatures have risen approximately 1 degree Celsius. 3 of the past 5 years have been the warmest on record. I hope it worked. What I was wanting to do was explain that the world is so interconnected that nobody should have been surprised that we ended up with the COVID pandemic. But also that I feel very strongly that whether everybody realizes it or not, we've learned an awful lot of very important lessons over the past year that I hope we don't lose sight of when we get back to a more normal situation.
And that's Frontline News. I'm Larry Roberts. I hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks.